that are here today. Leibovitz School of Business and Economics, Republican Bank, Maurice's, Pure Driven, Destination Duluth, and our supporting sponsors, Apex, Entrepreneur Fund, Grammar Saloon and Grill, the Holiday Inn, National Bank of Commerce. Are you guys here? I saw a few guys here. Where you guys? All right here. Thank you. Minnesota Power, are you here? All right. ProPrint and Center of Economics and Development. And the UMD bookstore. All right, thank you all the sponsors. Without you, we will be not able to make this possible. So we thank you for supporting this initiative. And I'd like to thank again my team, the students that came together to making this possible. This whole conference is made of students from UMD. We worked hard. It's a great opportunity for students to take what they learned in class and put it in practice, from planning, organizing, and executing, all done by students. And thanks to teachers and staff that are here today, and the students that are here to support and to hear from the successful entrepreneurs that will share their stories and expertise. I'll go ahead and introduce the Leibovitz School of Business and Economics, Dean Amy, or you can call her Dr. H. All right, you come on the stage.
Thank you, G-Ray. Everyone can hear in the back? Okay, perfect. Welcome to the second annual Leibovitz School of Business and Economics Entrepreneurship Conference at the University of Minnesota Duluth. What's so exciting is that this conference really epitomizes who we are in LSBE and also who UMD is as a whole. The Leibovitz School of Business and Economics prides itself on providing distinctive, hands-on experiential learning opportunities to students both inside and outside of the classroom. So whether organizing and executing this conference or analyzing real company sales data from companies such as Maurice's or Target or Hormel, or managing the $1 million plus Bulldog Fund, and that's real money that the students manage, our students have incredible opportunities. Our students and faculty interact meaningfully with the business community on a regular and ongoing basis. And it is our strong relationships with the local business community, with the regional business community, as sponsors, as conference participants, as internship providers, who really make all that we do for our students possible. So we really thank you. And now I would like to introduce Chancellor Black, who will give a welcome as we kick off our program today. Chancellor Black, please let's give a round of applause for him.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everyone. Really is a pleasure for me to be here for the second annual entrepreneurship conference that UMD is sponsoring. I was thrilled to see this conference happen last year, and from what I've seen of the lineup this year, it's going to be just as good, if not even better. When Dean Haitapelto originally proposed the idea of this conference, one of the primary features that she wanted was for it to be entirely student-run. The student team involved in this year's conference included 19 individuals in all. They began working last spring, and all of them were volunteers. And I think as the dean just said, this conference really exemplifies who we are within the Leibovitz School of Business and Economics, but also throughout UMD. And I really appreciate the students' efforts. They handle every aspect of the event, including marketing, sponsorship, fundraising, securing speakers and panelists, event registration, you name it. The entire thing was done by students. The student team was led by G-Ray, Mbaba, who you just heard from a few minutes ago, who put countless hours into this event. So if we do have some of the 19 student volunteers who are in the audience or standing at the back, would you either stand or wave, and let's give them a round of applause. As I said a few minutes ago, I do believe that this entrepreneurship conference embodies what makes UMD strong and distinctive. Our students are able to learn from people who have created and run their own businesses. It really puts learning into the community beyond the classroom. And I think it's important to me as chancellor that UMD is very much integrated in the larger community, not just Duluth, but the larger Twin Ports community as well as northeastern Minnesota in particular. I often say that UMD is not just located in this community, but we are of the community. And the more we can interact with business leaders, with entrepreneurs, with community service organizations, the more our research is groundbreaking research, but research that has practical applications, and the more it involves our students in that research, the better off we are. So again, I express my congratulations to all that have made this, this conference possible. So I hope you enjoyed today's events. I did want to mention that all the students here, if you're graduating in December of this year or of May 2017, or if you're not graduating, if you're not graduating this year, please pay attention, because next year we're going to need another big group of volunteers. And the great tradition that last year's students started and this year's students have continued is something we want to make sure that goes on for years and years. So again, thank you all for being here. Have a great day.
All right, a quick reminder. Does everybody got this? All right, at the back, there's a social network event that's will be happening at 5 p.m. at Grandma's Salon, Grandma's Sport Garden. Many students will know where that is. And this network event is an opportunity to meet some speakers that will be there, some community members. It's been an opportunity for you to network with them and talk to them, and you had a chance. There'll be an opportunity to win some really cool prizes like an iPad. And also, we're still trying to decide which one. One of these awesome furnitures you see on the stage from Greg Benson, it's Lowell Design Furniture, 100% made out of waste materials. And it's valued, some of them are valued at $700 a piece. You might have a chance to win that if you attend the network event at the back of your program. All right, I'll go ahead, I'll introduce I'll call upon Chris Swanson with Pure Driven. They're one of our sponsors. He's going to introduce our first speaker. Chris Swanson.
Thank you, G-Ray. Morning, everybody. Welcome to this great event. This is awesome. This is a very neat thing that everybody's put on. And as I pull up my notes here, got all the phones. We've been working with with LSBE and have built an internship program with them. And I have to say, I have been so impressed by what they do here. And that's something the Chancellor spoke about, an amazing group of volunteers that have put this together, and it's just wonderful to see. We're proud to be a sponsor because at the heart of Pure Driven is really entrepreneurship. We're a digital marketing company. We're located up the shore in Two Harbors, beautiful Two Harbors, and we love doing what we do. I'm also co-founder of Destination Duluth, and Destination Duluth is an organization, nonprofit, that helps people realize their dream of moving to Duluth, which is pretty amazing. If any of you are interested in internships, I gotta put this plug in. Both Destination Duluth and Pure Driven are always looking for people that want to learn more about digital marketing. And now to introduce today's speaker. This individual embodies everything. He's the picture of entrepreneurship. I first met Jonathan down in a little office on Superior Street in Duluth. And when I was there, Jonathan was showing me how he could take two internet connections and make one of them work if the other one failed. Because at that time, not like it is today with data centers where servers are located remotely, they had their servers located right in their office. Jonathan has a background in engineering and has been recognized by companies like 3M as being an exceptional entrepreneur with very technologically advanced ideas. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Jonathan Thralow.
Thank you, Chris. And remember, if you're from Two Harbors, to vote for Chris for mayor, because it's a very important, you want to get that done. And you know, whosever idea it was to put the garden gnomes here, that person should be commended, because to have garden gnomes up here is quite an opportunity to be able to speak with garden gnomes. So do what you love to do, and the money will come. I'm sure you've all heard it. It's a common cliche. But for me, it was much different than that. For me, it was more, figure out what you're good at. Work harder at that than anyone else. The money will come, and then you'll learn to love what you do. So I've read a lot of books on entrepreneurialism over the years, and many of these books try to classify an entrepreneur in several different areas. So you've got many different personality types that succeed in entrepreneurialism where some might fail, but I think it can all be boiled down into two different types of entrepreneur. On one side, you have the mad scientist, who locks himself in a room and creates an invention or writes a computer program to make the world work in a different way, maybe a better way. And on the other side, you have the hustler, the person going out and selling, the person that can lead a group of people in one direction with a vision and get them all to work together. Famous mad scientists would be Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, and on the hustler side, you've got Steve Jobs and Oprah. Today, I stand in front of you as a mad scientist with very little hustler skills, and I apologize for that because a hustler can naturally speak in front of a crowd better than a mad scientist. So just hang with me. I've got a pretty good story, but delivery might be a little bit off. So I'm going to explain what it was like to grow up a mad scientist. I'm going to start out as a Russian doll, as the smallest part of a Russian doll, and then build the layers on top of that. So that if you are a mad scientist or a hustler, you can see what it was like and the paths that I took in order to become the mad scientist. So starting at the smallest part of the Russian doll, the child. I was born on a farm in central Minnesota, the youngest of 5 kids, and I remember always being lost in my own imagination, separate from the physical world. And it would be simple, like I would be at the dinner table, and my father would go, John, 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 pass me the potatoes. I'd be like, oh, here you go. And he always thought I was a little bit slow. He didn't understand what it was like to be a daydreamer. So that was one thing that actually motivated me throughout my life. I wanted to prove to my father that I wasn't slow, I just wasn't living in the same world that he was. So the first experience that I had as an entrepreneur was when I was 5 years old. My mother used to bring me down to, we had a bunch of animals, cows, sheep, pigs, horses, chickens, lambs, goats. But we had one cow that I got to know really well named Heffy. And my mom would bring me down every morning and every evening, and we'd milk that cow. And we would bring the milk back up to the house, and we would not cook it, pasteurize it. And we would feed it to the family every meal, and after every week we would have some milk left over. So my mother let me go to the neighbor's house and sell that milk. And I made $15.45 selling the milk to the neighbors. And that was at the spring of the year, and my father's sows were starting to have piglets. And he was selling them off, and I asked if I could buy one of those piglets from him. And he let me for $15.45. And he taught me how to build a fence for it, and how to feed and water it, and get the manure out of the fence, and how to castrate that pig. So I did that for the summer, and it was not a fun job. In fact, I think I'm still emotionally scarred from castrating that baby pig. But I continued on throughout the summer, and by the fall season, it became time to bring that pig to market. And I sold that pig for $100. And I asked my mom to bring me to the bank so that I could set up a savings account. And then I started kindergarten. And that's something that I draw strength upon even today as a great experience of how I didn't love really any part of that operation, but by the time it was over, I learned to respect what I had done as being a lot of hard work. So then the next layer of the Russian doll would be when I was 10 years old. And I was able to travel outside of the house about a mile, and I met a friend, a neighborhood kid about my age, last of 5 kids, and his name was Roger Hewling, and we used to tinker, we used to make inventions. So the first invention that we wanted to do, we wanted to see if we could fly. So we found a couple of scrap plywood pieces, cut them in the shape of wings, and then drilled a couple of holes in them, and then tied them to our arms. So we got these done, and then we climbed to the top of his shed, and I looked at Roger, and Roger looked at me, and I could see that he wasn't going to jump. And something that I'm able to do is I don't have a whole lot of fear. So I strapped those wings to my arms, and I ran as fast as I could at the very tip of that barn, and I jumped. And I figured I'd at least glide. Well, I didn't glide. I went straight down. And luckily it was wintertime. And there was about 4 feet of snow, and I landed in the snow, and I was okay. Roger ran over to the edge, and he looked over, he could see I was giggling. So he backed up, and he started running, and he put his arms out, and Roger couldn't fly either. And he fell down. So eventually we just took the wings off, and we started jumping off the barn and played around for the next hour. But one of the big things that I learned from that experience is that no matter how good or how bad your ideas are, you're never going to understand if they work or not if you don't jump. So you have to take the chance. You have to be willing to test your ideas, or you'll never know. The second invention that Roger and I made, I thought it would be neat to build a bicycle that could ride on water. So we took an old bicycle that didn't work anymore, but the chain worked, and the pedals worked, and the back sprocket worked. So we welded a bar to the back of the sprocket, and then welded paddles onto it. And then we took 4 5-gallon buckets and fastened 2 in the front where the front tire would go, and then 2 in the back where the back tire would go. And we went out to our stock pond where the animals fed, so it was murky, dirty, and yucky. And I got on the bike, because Roger wasn't willing to get on the bike. So I got on the bike in the shallows, and then Roger gave the bike a good push. And I went out into the deep. And it wasn't seconds. I tried to pedal, and I didn't even complete a full revolution, and the buckets shifted, and they started filling with water, and the entire contraption sunk. And I believe that bicycle's still out there sitting at the bottom of our stock pond. But the lesson that I learned there is that many of the ideas fail. We tested lots of different ideas. We only came up with one idea that semi-worked, which was an extension of a snorkel, but most of our ideas failed. So the next layer of the Russian doll would probably be my high school years. And I already learned that one of the things that was important to me during the high school years was self-actualization. And I don't know any entrepreneur who is successful and doesn't really understand themselves. So the first part of that was know what you're good at. And in order to know what you're good at, you have to understand who you are. So through the high school years, well, I already knew that I was willing to take risks. Then I learned that I was a nonconformist. And then I learned I had an issue with authority. And I learned that I was really good at school. So I ended up being the kid that graduated with honors and spent 1/3 of his time in detention. And while I was in high school, I also saw all of my older siblings going on to college, and they were taking out these massive student loans. And I didn't want to waste that $100 that I had earned so hard for. So I figured there's got to be a better way. One day I heard on the radio something about the Army National Guard. Willing to pay for your tuition and your books, and plus you got your basic pay, and if you picked the right sector to go into, you could get a good bonus. So I was 17 years old, and I had my parents drive down with me, and they signed the papers because I couldn't legally do it at 17. And 1 week after high school, I joined the Army National Guard and was shipped off to basic training. I assumed when I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, that there'd be a lot of people like me. There could be the daydreamers who just wanted to pay for college, but I was stuck in a situation where a lot of these soldiers used the infantry, which I happened to sign up for, as a method of becoming an advanced soldier. They were starting at infantry, going on to airborne, then getting the Ranger School, the Green Beret and Special Forces. That was everybody's goal. And the infantry happened to be like the weeder class. And I didn't fit in. There was no time for daydreaming. I had to focus every moment, and I was flailing. It was a very painful time in my life. I didn't fit in, being a nonconformist, it just didn't work. And then one day I learned how to put lipstick on the pig. I decided to change my entire mentality of the reason why I was there. Suddenly the drill sergeant, he became my personal trainer. And this whole army place that we were in was a health spa. So I suddenly became motivated and worked my body as hard as I could. And it became a luxury in order to have somebody tell me how to do a correct push-up. And these concepts actually continue to live with me. I learned how to exercise. And by the time I was finished with my Army career, I actually ended up with the highest physical fitness award score of our entire battalion. I didn't advance in any other way in the military, but I was able to get myself in shape. Then, after the military, after basic training, I started a college. I actually started up here. And throughout my college career, in the beginning, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I jumped from major to major, and then one day I took a physics class. And I thought, this physics thing is actually kind of fun. So I realized that with physics, you would naturally then go into engineering. It was a pretty difficult schooling for me because engineering school is pretty difficult. But I figured if I buckled down and studied every night, I could get myself through it. So I would go to the library after every school day, and I would study from 5 o'clock until 10 o'clock until they kicked me out of the library. But I still had a problem with my imagination. So what I did is I made an imaginary BB, which was my imagination, and I put it in a glass bottle, and then I put a cork on it, and I put it on my desk. And I would just study, and I would sit there and study, and with my imagination moved, I could learn that I could focus. But every once in a while, as my grades got better, and I found myself succeeding in engineering school, that BB started to move. And the better that I got, and the higher grades that I got, that BB started ricocheting off the side of it. And once in a while, it would hit the cork. And I knew that someday, that BB was going to blow the cork off. And I started getting some of the best grades in my class. And I graduated with honors with engineering by the time it was over. And at that point, I was confident. I was extremely confident, maybe overly confident, but I knew that whatever organization I decided to work for, I was going to make people rich. If I worked for a small company, or if I worked for a large company, I was going to make a lot of people money. Or I could go out and work for a little company and make a few people a lot of money. But I found that my sister had a sunglass company that she'd been working on for the last 10 years, selling sunglasses in the mall here in Duluth. And she was dreaming of putting that company online. So I thought to myself, I could go work with her, and I could make both of us rich. So before the last year of school, I went up to Duluth, I moved to Duluth, and I started developing her website for her and putting all of her products that she had in inventory online. And the phone started, this is 1996, she started putting things online. In 1997, I actually moved up here. And the phone started ringing. In 1996, she did $100,000 in sales. And by the end of 1997, she did over $200,000 in sales. But that year, I moved back to finish my last year of school. But the last year of school really wasn't that hard, so I was able to work on her website at night instead of studying at night. So every night I would work on the website, and during the day I would go to school. And I remember one night that I locked myself in my room, and I was going to build an entirely new design. So in the meantime, I'd been studying Perl and HTML and Photoshop, and I was getting pretty proficient with the internet tools. So I locked myself in the room, and I created an entirely new website where every pixel was exactly where I wanted it. Every line of code was structured so it loaded fast. And I was using JavaScript so that when you moved your mouse over a link, it would change color. A lot of these things I had never seen on an e-commerce site before. I knew I was breaking ground. So that morning, as soon as the library opened up, I rushed in to test each one of those machines so that I could make sure that it worked on everybody's browser. And I tested the first machine, and I looked at it, and I backed up. In all its majesty, I thought to myself, this is gonna get me chicks. Never got me chicks, but we did end up running that design and that look up until 2009. So then after I graduated, all of my friends who I went to school with, they were getting great jobs, working in engineering places in Minneapolis, and they had benefits. You know, they were salary jobs, and that was something that really actually kind of looked appealing to me. But my teachers then asked me what job I was going to do, and I said I was going to move up to Duluth, and I was going to develop web pages for my sister's sunglass business. And they looked at me and they felt so sorry for me. They knew how hard I worked at that engineering degree, and they knew that I was throwing it all away. And they tried to convince me, but the only thing I needed to know, I asked of my sister. And I asked her, Danielle, do you think the internet's going to be around next year? And she looked at me in a matter-of-fact way, and she said, Jonathan, people get porn on the internet. It's going to be here. So that's all I needed to know. I moved up to Duluth and started developing 12-hour days on the website. And that's another thing. Entrepreneurialism is a lot of work. If you're not willing to put in 12-hour days, day after day, and when somebody asks you to go to the party, you have to tell them no, and in the back of your mind, you're not just telling them no for tonight, you're telling them no, I won't be able to make it to that party probably for the next 4 years. It's dedication and it's a lot of hard work. So I was working 12-hour days at less than minimum wage. And luckily, when I was in college, I ended up taking out scholarships that I didn't need, and I was investing that into the stock market. So by the time I graduated, I had paid all of my student loans back and had about $20,000 that I could live off of. And I had no student loans. So I could take the risk of working for nothing, basically. I had a computer, I had food, and I had shelter. And that's all me or my sister had. So we just continued to work, and we believed that what we were doing was going to pay off someday. So the first year that I joined, in 1996, it was $100,000 a year she was doing in sales. Then it jumped to $200,000, and then it jumped to $425,000, and by 1999, we were doing over $1 million in sales. Our rate of growth was increasing at an increasing rate. So we ended up being, we caught the attention of Inc. magazine, and they touted us as being one of the fastest growing businesses in the United States of America, privately owned. And at that same time, 1999, you couldn't turn on the TV or the radio without hearing about the internet. it was hot. And there was one segment of the internet that was white hot, and that was e-commerce. So we were in the crosshairs of all the venture capital that was being funneled into the internet. We were getting calls by companies who wanted to buy us, VCs who wanted to invest in us. And my sister came to me one day and said, John, we just got an opportunity where we can sell this company and we can make a lot of money. And I said, no, we just started. I've only been doing this for a few years, and look at how fast we're growing. We can take this just from sunglasses and we can turn this into any product that we want. We have the base set so that we can build anything. And she said, well, I'm going out to New York next week and I'm going to entertain the offer. So she flew out to New York and she called me and she said that she was sipping champagne and that she just got an offer for more money than our family had ever seen. More money than my parents had made in their entire lifetime. And that she had to take this offer. I tried to convince her otherwise, but there was no convincing her. She sold the company. So when she came back, we negotiated our correct amounts, and I remember I really thought that the company that was buying us was going to do well. I'm also a risk taker, so I took an all-stock deal. And I looked at the stock charts, and I was a millionaire. I remember grabbing the most expensive pair of sunglasses that we had at the time, putting them on and walking down to the bank, and I was walking on 3 feet of air, just the entire time there and the entire time back. It was a magical, magical time, being a young kid and having $1 million. And it wasn't soon after that that I realized the team out in New York was redeveloped. They put together a team to redevelop the Peepers website, the site that I had poured my heart and soul into for the last few years. And I was crushed, and I was scared. What am I going to do? So at that time, I also started developing on our other site, binoculars.com, because I knew it was evident that they were going to take it over. And it wasn't a few days after I changed the DNS to point to their new website that Peepers sales started to slide, something we'd never seen. And I knew that when I signed that contract for the stock, that I was locked into this stock for a year, and there was no getting out. So I was stuck, and I became depressed, very depressed for an entire 12 months. But I poured what energy I had into building the binoculars.com site. So the peepers.com, whatever they were doing, they were trying to make it work. They were trying to build it back and learn from their mistakes, but the sales just incrementally slowed and slowed. And that binoculars.com site that I was working on continued to rise. And I remember the day that binoculars.com sales surpassed peepers.com. But by that time, it was too late. We were hitting 2001 with the big dot-com bust, and the venture capital money had dried up. And the main site, peepers.com, was in shambles. So nobody wanted to invest any money in this company. And the stock price was going down next to nothing. And by the time I was able to sell, I sold that $1 million in stock for about $15,000. So then, the company ended up going bankrupt. And my sister, smart as she was, she said that she had negotiated the paperwork. She's a hustler. She knew what she was doing. She was smart. She thought like a lawyer, and she thought like an accountant. And so she set out many provisions that if that company should fail, that every asset would come back to us. So we ended up getting the entire business back, binoculars.com, peepers.com. We had lots of different domain names. However, the company was not doing $1 million in sales, and we still had all of that staff. So it was really touch and go for a while as we continued to build that company back up. Also, the margins on binoculars are about 20%, where the margins on sunglasses are around 50%. So the cash flow was a lot more difficult. And every sunglass vendor was coming to us asking for reimbursement for all of the product that we had, when it was not us, it was still Peepers.com, but it was the other organization that caused the bankruptcy. So they really put Peepers.com into shambles, and there was really never a great way to restore that business. So we took what we had with Binoculars.com and continued to build it. And that first year, I think we only made $500,000 in sales. But we continued to focus, and we continued to put in those long hours. And we continued to grow Binoculars.com, and it started to take off. And then, at that point, we just leveraged the same technology that we had, and we ran other websites through it. So we started running telescopes.com, hammocks.com, spottingscopes.com, rifle scopes. We were selling pans. We had pans.com. We just used that same platform that we built for binoculars, and it worked. So we started ramping, the business started growing, and it started growing really fast again. We ended up in 2004 hitting the Inc. 500 as being one of the fastest growing companies for the second time, and then we hit it again for a third time in 2005. And we started getting attention again. We were in Time magazine, and a lot of other journalists and businesses became interested in what we were doing. So by this time, we had 65 employees, and we were doing $30 million in sales. And this was the beginning of 2006, and my sister and I both spotted it about that same time that suddenly there was an interest in e-commerce again. There were a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and we both looked at each other. By this time, we'd gone through so much that we could read each other's minds. And we realized that there was another bubble on the horizon. Amazon purchased diapers.com, and then they purchased Zappos.com, and everybody wanted to get in on a piece of this e-commerce business. So the offers started flowing in again. And my sister, being the wise hustler that she is, she went through each one of these offers, whether it be an investment from a VC company in our business, whether it be a merger with another e-commerce business, or whether it be a stock deal or a cash deal, and all the details that go along with that, working with the lawyers, working with the accountants, she was able to pick the best deal for us. So at the end of 2006, we exited the company in an all-cash deal. And it was, I remember that moment because I knew that cash wasn't going to go to zero by somebody else's mistake. It would have to be my own mistake. And we wanted to be set for life this time. And this deal did. It set us for life. While it was one of the most exciting times in my life, it was one of the most painful times in my life. Because the asset that I believed we had was the teams that we had built. My sister building the shipping team and the phone staff team, and myself building the IT team that had been through so much. We had worked together so tightly that we were on the cutting edge of technology in a way that very few businesses ever have been or ever were. And we were able to sit together and work out some really hairy problems. So my assumption was that, like the first sale that we had, they wanted to keep our teams in place. And especially this team that we had built, because we'd proven ourselves. We were able to grow 100% or more every single year. Well, one of the first things that they let us know after the deal was signed was that they were taking all of the assets and moving them to Omaha. And I cried. I realized that this team that I'd worked so hard in putting together and melding and teaching and coaching was going to be torn apart. So they came in and they took all of the assets, they took the inventory, they allowed anyone who wanted to move to Omaha, and they took all of the websites, the domain names, and the customer lists, and that's what they wanted. So then the company was sold and disabandoned, and then it was, now what? Now what do I do with my life? And that's what I get asked a lot now. Why are you doing what you're doing? And I realized that marketing websites by using data and analytics was what I became really good at and what I ultimately love to do. So I've been marketing websites ever since the company sold in a very different way than most people do, using analytics, using the data, big data, to understand the environment and the business that that a company is in. So, also the other thing that I started doing was investing in small startups and mentoring those startups, which is something that I really liked and I really enjoy doing. One of the first investments that I made was in a big data company who was organizing and structuring all of the data that's on the internet so that people could use that data and leverage the data of the internet in order to build their own structured and business intelligence situations. So all of the lessons that I've learned is first, figure out what you're good at. And by that, it is self-actualization. And also figuring out what you're good at also means figuring out what you're not good at. And what I'm good at and what I'm not good at is kind of the same thing, is imagination. The idea to think creatively and solve creative problems. And every one of you has a gift. Every one of you is an individual who has a talent, and you have to figure out that talent. And then you have to be that boy who is on the top of the shed, willing to jump, to test your ideas, to test your gift. Now it's a risk and it's scary, and I realize that for most people it's even more scary for them than it was for me. But you have to continue. Yes? Oh, am I running long? I can be done real quick. I'm almost there. Sorry. So then testing and jumping. And then putting the work in, putting those 12-hour days in. And then after you do the work and you test it, the money comes. And then you can learn to love and respect the work that you do. Thank you.